Last week, we heard Sri Shankaracharya's opening words in the Vivekachudamani. Words that remind us of the immense value of a human birth and all that is possible in it. Out of great compassion, Shankaracharya reminds us, spiritual seekers, how precious this human birth is, so that we don't take it for granted, so that we understand its value and make the best use of it. His words are a wake-up call to all of us not to waste what we have ourselves earned, not to waste the blessings that God in His mercy has heaped upon us as a result of our own good actions of 1,000 million births. It is incredible how far we have come on our long journey towards self-realization. We have little idea how fortunate we are. We are now at a stage where we have nearly everything that is needed to complete the journey quickly, to become free forever. We have a human body. We have the intelligence to understand what the true purpose of human life is. And we have a desire to realize that goal. So, in the next 2-3 verses, Shankaracharya is going to remind us again. Durlabham trayame vaitat daivanugraha hetukam manushyatvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha samshrayah. Shankaracharya says, 3 things are rare indeed and can be had only through God's grace: human birth, longing for liberation, and the protective care of a great soul. But labdhva kathanchin narajanma durlabham tatrapi pumstvam shruti paradarshanam yastvatma muktau nayateta moodhadhi sahyatmaha swam vinihantya sadgrahat. Having by some means obtained a human birth, and that too in a male body, and having acquired a mastery of the Vedas, if such a person still doesn't struggle for liberation, that fool commits suicide, because he destroys himself by clinging to unreal things. Again, itah konvasti moodhatma yastu swarthe pramadyati durlabham manusham deham prapya tatrapi paurusham. What greater fool can there be than the man who, having gained this rare human birth, and that too in a male body, neglects due to delusion to realize his own highest good. Now, right at this point, I'd like to briefly amplify I'd like to briefly amplify what I already mentioned in the last class. The words pumstvam and viprata are likely to be misunderstood, but they don't have to be. Nobody, absolutely nobody, can be debarred from acquiring spiritual knowledge. Spiritual life is open to everybody without exception. And divine incarnations like Buddha and Shankara, who are the very personifications of compassion, personifications of mercy, who came down for everybody, they would be the last to exclude anyone from cultivating spirituality. it is quite clear that what is meant here is not the attributes of the body, but the qualities of the mind. I repeat, not the attributes of the body, but the qualities of the mind. Pumstvam, manliness, viprata, brahmanahood. There have always been women saints and mystics. There have always been non-Brahmana saints and mystics. And Buddha and Shankara must have known that. For that matter, it is the same with the words grihastha and sannyasi, householder and monastic. It is all in the mind. Spiritual life is open to all. So, contrary to being a denigration, abwertung, contrary to being a denigration of women or non-Brahmanas, these verses are in fact a warning to those who already happen to be born in favorable circumstances, born with advantages and qualities that are helpful to spiritual life, but who may still not be awake to that fact. It is a warning to such people that negligence or failure to convert those advantages into spiritual success, that would be a pity. To have everything and then to lose it, all due to one's own carelessness or laziness, that would be a shame. That is what is implied in these 3 verses. So, this is Shankaracharya's repeated reminder to all sadhakas. Make the best use of the opportunity you have now. It is God-given. Devanugraha. Interestingly here, there is another reading of this word Devanugraha, and that is Daivanugraha. Daiva means fate, destiny. But what is fate? What we call fate is nothing but the result of our own past actions, good and bad. That is what we call fate. God is perfectly impartial. He has no favorites. In the Bhagavad Gita, he has already said, I am the same towards all beings. To me, there is none hateful nor dear. We may ask, if it is all just a matter of karma, as you sow, so you reap, and there is no helping it, then what is the place of God? What is the place of His grace in the scheme of things? Has God then no hand at all in the workings of the law of karma? We may as well ask whether God has no hand in the working of the laws of nature. If laws are more powerful than God Himself, then God wouldn't be God. The point is, God works through laws. The laws are His. What we call a natural law or a moral law is only an expression, an embodiment of His will. It is all God's will in action. It is not that God does nothing and lets things happen as they should. He is called Karmadhyaksha, the director of the law. It is He who creates the world, where each soul finds an environment suited to its own tendencies that it has itself acquired through its own actions. God is like the gardener who makes the seed beds in his garden and waters them. He helps the seeds grow, but what the seeds grow into depends upon their own nature. So, under God's overall control, everything functions in its own way. This is what Daiva means. This is how we should understand it. So, if we are human beings, blessed with physical and mental strength, and an aptitude, a naigung for spiritual life, it is said to be our sudaiva, good fortune. Shankaracharya says, make the most of it while you still have it. Sri Ramakrishna's disciples would say, it is the grace of your own mind that you need more. When you don't have the grace of your own mind, even the grace of God becomes powerless. So that is daiva. Anyhow, let us go through these through the three verses one by one. First, Durlabham trayame vaitat devanugraha hetukam manushyatvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha samshrayah. Durlabham trayame vaitat devanugraha hetukam manushyatvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha samshrayah. Three things are rare indeed and can be had only through God's grace: human birth, longing for liberation, and the protective care of a great soul. What Devanugraha, divine grace, means, we just saw. We saw how closely it is related to our karma. And the glory and the rarity of human birth, manushyatva, that also we have understood. Now comes mumukshutva, longing for liberation. It brings to mind the words of the Gita. Among thousands of people, one here and there strives for perfection. Of all living beings on earth, human beings alone can inquire about the self, about the Atman. Among innumerable human beings, only a few, comparatively speaking, only a few develop a desire for such an inquiry. So, rarer than a human birth is the intense longing to know the true nature of one's own soul, one's own self. And the longing to break free from the bondage of samsara with the help of that knowledge, the knowledge of reality. That is to say, the knowledge of the identity of Atman and Brahman. So, mumukshutva is the intense longing of the soul to free itself from all bondage of body, mind, and ego. Bondage is created by ignorance. But how does this longing arise in the first place? Vedanta says, by rational investigation and also by actual experience, the seeker has understood that anybody attached to the world is a bound creature. The seeker has understood also that a bound creature is never really happy. It is this realization that gives rise to the intense longing for freedom. It is not some kind of momentary yearning created by some frustration or worldly loss, nor is it mental restlessness. Mental restlessness is an inferior state of mind. A restless mind is only a confused mind. But mumukshutva is the result of certain spiritual virtues. Those virtues we'll be discussing sometime later, but mumukshutva is the result of those virtues. They are something that give the purified mind an intense one-pointedness, gives it the power to break through the walls of worldliness. The Upanishad says The Atman reveals itself only to one who longs for it intensely. So this spiritual longing it's an irrepressible urge that unifies the seeker's entire personality, that makes the entire personality one-pointed, that enables to reach them the goal of moksha. One must feel as if one's head were on fire. That is how the books describe this passion for knowledge, this longing for freedom. Without this emotional urge, without this intensity, one-pointedness, we won't be able to achieve the true goal of human life in spite of being born as human beings. So that is mumukshutva. Then finally, one must get Mahapurusha Samshraya, the protective care of a great soul. That is, the grace and guidance of an illumined teacher. This is the rarest of the three. I may have been born a human being. I may be a spiritual seeker. But I may not find an enlightened and compassionate master. The truth is, even if such a Mahapurusha happens to be before my eyes, I won't be able to recognize him unless my own spiritual aspiration, my mumukshutva, is intense. For example, there were people to whom Sri Ramakrishna was an ordinary temple priest. And there were devotees and disciples to whom there was no doubt that Sri Ramakrishna was God himself. So you know where the difference lies. But it can also happen that a seeker, in spite of possessing burning mumukshutva, may still have to wait a long time and suffer before they find a Mahapurusha, a Sadguru, before they can get an opportunity to take refuge in him. We don't know what determines the time when a Sat Shishya will meet the Sadguru. The ways of karma, the ways of divine grace are mysterious. It is impossible to understand these things. And that is why Shankaracharya says, discipleship to an illumined teacher is the rarest of rare things and can only be had through divine grace. Now what happens when a Sat Shishya, who is burning with a desire for liberation, meets a Sadguru? Sri Ramakrishna says, if a cobra sees a bullfrog, that's a big fat frog. If a cobra sees a bullfrog, the frog will be silenced in 3 croaks at the most. A man's ego is destroyed after 3 croaks, so to say, if he gets into the hands of a real teacher. Sri Ramakrishna says, if by the grace of the Guru one's ego vanishes, then one sees God. If the teacher is a powerful Sadguru, the disciple will be able to make rapid progress, reach the goal quickly with little effort. And if the disciple happens to be a Sat Shishya, capable, committed, then the teacher's work also becomes much easier. Just a little guidance, just a little direction is enough, and the disciple will make headway, fortschritt, with their own self-effort, without too much dependence on the teacher. So both are necessary in higher spiritual life, mumukshutva and Mahapurusha Samshraya. intense longing for freedom, and the protective care of a great soul. In fact, the meeting of a real mumukshu and a true Mahapurusha, this is a rare occasion. It's an extraordinary event in the spiritual world. It is one of the most beautiful things in spiritual life, and the joy of it is known only to them. So, let's go through the verse once again. Durlabham trayame vaitat devanugraha hetukam manusyatvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha samshrayah. Three things are rare indeed and can be had only through God's grace: human birth, longing for liberation, and the protective care of a great soul. This is Shankaracharya's reminder. Then comes the warning. But before we move on to that, let us take a look at our own present situation. We have acquired this human body. But do we feel any longing, any intense longing for liberation? In most cases, no. We would rather go at a comfortable pace. What Sri Ramakrishna used to call a lukewarm attitude. So we know why a great soul has not entered our life. Even if such a person were to enter our life now, their value wouldn't be appreciated. But that doesn't mean we should spend all our life waiting for divine grace to descend on us. The breeze of divine grace is always blowing. Let us at least try to unfurl our sails and catch the breeze. Let us begin with what we have. If we are sincere, we can be sure that what our soul needs for its onward journey will be supplied to it at the proper time. It is a law of the spiritual world. What a soul deserves, it gets. This is also God's own promise. Those who worship me, meditating on their identity with me, and ever devoted to me, to them I carry what they lack, and for them I preserve what they already have. Sri Krishna has said these words in the Bhagavad Gita. Those who worship me, meditating on their identity with me, and ever devoted to me, to them I carry what they lack, and for them I preserve what they already have. We need to devote some time every day to self-analysis. We need to ask ourselves, why have I come here? How am I spending my time? Do I really want to be free? Am I really struggling to be free? Let us not deceive ourselves. As spiritual seekers, we should do at least this much. Otherwise, the words of warning that now follow will apply to us. Shankaracharya says, Labdhva kathanchin narajanma durlabham tatrapi pumstvam shruti paradarshanam yastvatma muktau nayateta mudhadhi sahyatmaha swam vinihantya sadgrahat. Labdhva kathanchit narajanma durlabham tatrapi pumstvam shruti paradarshanam yastu atmamuktau nayateta mudhadhi sahi atmaha swam vinihanti asadgrahat. Having by some means obtained a human birth, and that too in a male body, and having acquired a mastery of the Vedas, if such a person still does not struggle for liberation, that fool commits suicide because he destroys himself by clinging to unreal things. Shankaracharya is not only warning but also criticizing those who have everything they need and still don't make use of their gifts. First, labdhva kathanchin narajanma durlabham, having somehow obtained a human birth. Now, call it chance or karma or divine grace, somehow we have come to possess this precious human body. There is an old Sanskrit verse which says, don't underestimate the value of your body. Don't underestimate the value of your body. This human body is the raft that your soul has purchased. These are beautiful words. This human body is the raft that your soul has purchased after paying the price in the form of innumerable good deeds performed in countless previous lives. After paying the price in the form of innumerable good deeds performed in countless previous lives. Why? What is the purpose? So that it can cross over the ocean of sorrow. So the poet says, work hard and reach the other shore before your boat breaks apart. Work hard and reach the other shore before your boat breaks apart. No matter how well built, any vehicle will break down sooner or later. It's a matter of time. And if the vehicle happens to be a boat, one small leak is enough to capsize it. Now, this body boat of ours has not one but 9 holes. And the journey is over rough seas. But this is still the best vehicle there is for the purpose. If we work hard, it is possible to keep the boat seaworthy, zeetauglich. It is possible to keep the hole sealed and the water out. But we must also work with a sense of urgency. Otherwise, time will overtake us before we reach the other shore. So, we have paid a high price and acquired this rare body, but we can't keep it forever. It is on lease. Next, tatrapi pumstvam. That too, a strong body. Let us assume that we are also blessed with physical health, mental strength, qualities like courage, fearlessness, independence, self-reliance, as I already pointed out, qualities that are traditionally associated with masculinity or maleness. Or, to put it differently, to be endowed with a physical and mental constitution that is perfectly suited for realizing moksha in this very life. That is what is meant. To be endowed, to be born with a physical and mental constitution that is perfectly suited for realizing moksha in this very life. Then comes Shruti Paradarshanam, a thorough knowledge of the Vedas and Vedanta, if you take it literally. This quality is particularly addressed to learned people, pandits. But of course, it applies to us also. We may not have a thorough knowledge of the scriptures, but many of us do have a fairly good grasp of their essential teachings, especially regarding the identity of Atman and Brahman. We have a fairly good grasp on the essence of Vedanta. I may not have realized that identity in actual experience, of course, but I am certainly convinced of the truth of that teaching. For all practical purposes, I may be living and behaving like a jiva, a limited individual soul, no doubt. But thanks to Vedanta, I have at least become aware that I am ignorant, that I am bound. I am aware of this. And I have come to know that the knowledge of Vedanta will help me out of my present condition, that it will liberate me. I have begun to feel responsible for the destiny of my own soul. That is the most important thing. But Shankaracharya says, merely knowing this is not enough. If you are really convinced of the truth of Vedanta, if you really feel responsible for yourself because of what you know about Vedanta, then it must cause you to act. You must feel the limitation of your present existence keenly, sharply. And you must struggle to break out of it. Otherwise, what is the use of merely knowing these things? It's as good as not knowing. And it is even worse in the case of a learned Pandit who boasts of his vast knowledge, who is mentally sharp but spiritually dull. As we heard last week, a Pandit who doesn't know how to discriminate between the real and the unreal is no Pandit at all. So what does Shankaracharya think of those who have been given everything they need to free themselves, but who are content, who are happy to remain bound? Yastvatma muktaye nayateta mudadhi sa atmaha. The fool who doesn't struggle for liberation is a suicide. By our own hard work, we have earned this human body. As a result of our own good deeds, we are now placed in these circumstances that are ideal for moksha. By our own effort, we have acquired knowledge of the scriptures. Now, after having done so much, after having gained all this, if we don't use them for the purpose for which they are meant, if we fail to convert our advantages into success, what else is it but foolishness? We are not just fools, but traitors, betrayers of our own higher self. The fool who doesn't strive for liberation kills his own soul. This spiritual suicide is far worse than physical suicide. Having everything and doing nothing. It is like a living corpse, being dead while living, spiritual death. Shankaracharya says that is the real suicide. Even the Upanishad, Ishopanishad, the Ishopanishad condemns a person who clings to ignorance as a slayer of the soul. You may wonder why rishis and acharyas should use such strong terms. But in their eyes, that is what it is. Clinging to avidya and rejecting the Atman is nothing short of spiritual suicide. How? Swam vinihanti asadgrahat. One destroys oneself by clinging to unreal things. Self-knowledge, which enables us to attain freedom and immortality is within our reach as human beings. It is only through ignorance and carelessness that we deprive ourselves of this supreme goal. As a result, we become victims. We become victims of repeated births and deaths. Because we cling to ignorance, because we don't want to give up our attachment to unreal things, in spite of knowing their unreal nature. We make ourselves victims of death by choice, which is what suicide is. And the rishis and acharyas have only said it as it is. It is like setting out to cross the ocean of sorrow, samsara. Setting out to cross the ocean and then getting attached to the boat. We will never make it. We will never cross over to the other shore. We will keep moving up and down, all the time driven by the winds and waves. This is the surest way of losing both boat and oneself. Just think of it. We don't realize the seriousness of our situation. And so we think these are strong words. Shankaracharya is only trying to wake us up, open our eyes to the urgency of the situation as is stringent. It is an act of great compassion. So, here is the verse again. Labdhva kathanchin narajanma durlabham tatrapi pumstvam shruti paradarshanam yastvatma muktau nayateta mudhadhi sahyatmaha swam vinihantya sadgrahat, having by some means obtained a human birth, that too in a male body, and having acquired a mastery of the Vedas, if such a person still doesn't struggle for liberation, that fool commits suicide because he destroys himself by clinging to unreal things. Then, finally, Shankaracharya glorifies human birth once again and repeats his reminder one last time. Itah konvasti mudhatma yastu swarthe pramadyati durlabham manusham deham prapya tatrapi paurusham. Itah konvasti mudhatma yastu swarthe pramadyati durlabham manusham deham prapya tatrapi paurusham. What greater fool can there be than the man who, having gained this rare human birth, and that too in a male body, neglects, due to carelessness, to realize his own highest good. You set out to scale the mountain. You have gathered all the equipment needed for the expedition with great difficulty. And now you have covered much of the way, much of the ascent, and you have now come within view of the summit. This is the very last stage. Having done so much and having come this far, if you now allow yourself to be diverted by lesser things, Shankaracharya says, what a pity. Itah konvasti mudhatma yastu swarthe pramadyati. What greater fool than he who is forgetful of his own interests. Swa-artha literally means one's own interests. But the word artha also has another meaning. The purpose, the goal or purpose of life. We have all heard of the 4 Purusharthas, goals of life: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Virtue, wealth, enjoyment, liberation. By fulfilling our respective dharmas, we march along the path of progress, and we march until we attain the supreme dharma, the supreme duty of all beings, the realization of truth. The satisfaction derived from dharma, artha and kama, that we have seen already, it is neither deep nor lasting. There always remains a hunger in the soul that these 3 can never fulfill. That spiritual hunger of the soul can only be fulfilled by moksha, total freedom. The first 3 ideals, dharma, artha, kama, they belong to the material world. And because they belong to that material world, for that reason, the happiness derived from them is short-lived, it is illusory. But the ideal of freedom can be realized only in the realm of spirit. And the bliss that follows that is everlasting. So, moksha is the last and the highest of the 4 Purusharthas. That is why moksha is called the Parama Purushartha, the supreme goal of life. And the means to it is jnana, knowledge of one's true self. Jnanena mukti. The ability to seek that ultimate freedom through self-knowledge comes to a soul only in a human birth. This we have heard again and again. Neither jnana nor moksha is possible in any other birth. This is what makes a human birth so valuable, the human body so precious. It has to be used for the special purpose for which it is given, for the fulfillment of the highest spiritual ideal. Shankaracharya is repeatedly reminding us of this foremost duty as human beings. So, more than mere criticism, these 2 verses show the depth of an illumined soul's concern, Sorge, the depth of their love and compassion for souls in bondage. As I said, it is for the sake of spiritual seekers like us that Shankaracharya came. It is for our sake that he wrote this Vivekachudamani. Let us never forget that. In the Kenopanishad we read, if a person knows the Atman here, they attain the true goal of life. If a person knows the Atman here, then they attain the true goal of life. If they don't know it here, a great destruction awaits them. Shankaracharya's words are only an echo of these words of the Upanishads. Here means even while living in this body. Commenting on this line of the Upanishad, Shankaracharya writes, "It is indeed miserable to be born into the world as a victim of ignorance, to lead the life of a phenomenal being, that is, a limited being, be it a god, a human being, or a subhuman creature. To experience the suffering of old age, disease, and death. Therefore, a person who has attained a high state of evolution, who who has cultivated spiritual yearning should make a special effort to realize in this very life the goal of freedom. I'll read it once again. This is from Shankaracharya's commentary. It is indeed miserable. Of course, I've paraphrased his words a little. It is indeed miserable to be born into the world as a victim of ignorance and lead the life of a phenomenal being, be it a god, a human being, or a subhuman creature, and experience the suffering of old age, disease, and death repeatedly. Therefore, a person who has attained a high state of evolution and cultivated spiritual yearning should make a special effort to realize in this very life the goal of freedom. A person who dies in ignorance of the self, he is condemned to roam in samsara through a never-ending chain of births and deaths. Nothing can be more pitiable than to be deprived of one's spiritual heritage on account of one's own sloth, one's own laziness, faulheit, and inadvertence, unachtsamkeit. So, before we conclude today's class, let us remind ourselves, itah konvasti moodhatma yastu swarte pramadyati durlabham manusham deham prapya tatrapi paurusham. What greater fool can there be than the one who, having gained this rare human birth, and that too with a strong body and a vigorous mind, neglects due to carelessness to realize one's own highest good. That is all for today. Thank you very much.